right? You were speaking, and I mean this in the most respectful way, you were speaking to the lowest in men. You're speaking about despair, about pity, about wickedness. And I was wondering, what would you say to the person who is happy to face a hangover in the morning just because, you know, they had a great night and they are happy to be alive and go on doing the things they do? And I was wondering if you think it is possible that the essential worthiness in human beings comes, or in living beings in general, comes from our power of self-expression. And if you think that autonomy, which is not the same as self-sufficiency, reflects on the way that you can respect the power of self-expression of every living being, and that you can form a harmonious and net of coexistence without bringing God into the picture.
I think I've understood both of your questions, and let me answer them one after another. The answer to the first one is very simple. What do you say to a person who wakes up the morning after and is completely happy and is just totally fulfilled doing things their own way? My answer to that person is, will you give every other human being the same privilege? Do whatever you want to do to find happiness. What if a person has no boundaries but finds happiness in killing, in raping, in destroying, in stealing, in plunder? You immediately invoke a moral law in order to say something is wrong. You have to brand some things wrong. And when you brand some things wrong, you have to say, what is the basis of that? I know people in the world that I have seen who have a completely different definition of right and wrong to yours and mine. But I don't give them the prerogative to define it on their own terms. So if there's no objective, I'm not the only one to say this. Great philosophers, Bertrand Russell, Kai Nielsen, Stephen Jay Gould, a scientific philosopher, all of them have said the problem with our philosophy is it makes moral pronouncements without the right to moral objectivity. So happiness is not the end result. Happiness is a byproduct of that which also ought to be morally guided and bounded. It's as simple as that. And if I cannot give everybody that prerogative without making judgments, then I'm playing God. So fulfillment is not the only thing. It is evident in our world that fulfillment is not there, but even if fulfillment is there, it's not the only test for whether I may live that way or not. Bertrand Russell, bicycling one day on his own bicycle in Cambridge, decided he was going to walk out on all of his relationships. Those relationships from which he walked out didn't quite like the man for that, but he did what he liked. He did what he wanted. So reasoning existentially from happiness alone is not the only point of reference for whether fulfillment ought to be pursued or not. In fact, Jean-Paul Sartre himself said, the problem with my philosophy of the pursuit of happiness is that the only question I can't answer is why I don't end up committing suicide at the same time. Because happiness is not the only ultimate pursuit. It has to be bounded by truth. So even if your assumption is right, that not everybody who pursues their own life is not unhappy, if I grant you that, I'm still saying that is not a justifiable way of justifying life because I am happy. There has to be more to it. That's why I said truth is the second thing. Now, I'll have to take other questions too. So let me take the second one for you now. The second one is on autonomy. The very word autonomy means a law unto yourself. That's what the word means. From Greek, autos, nomos. Is that the world you really want? Where everyone is a law unto themselves? I doubt it. I doubt it. So I think it is a mutually contradictory philosophy to hold. No matter how much you shake your head, it is mutually contradictory. It is mutually contradictory, recognized by philosophers And the philosophers say they're willing to live with the contradiction. But Richard Dawkins from Oxford University made the comment, I have come to the conclusion that there is no such thing as evil. We're all dancing to our DNA. Why does he say that? Because he wants to live autonomously, therefore evil is jettisoned and goodness is redefined. So I would just say to you that given your assumptions, your conclusions are invalid, that every person cannot possibly have total autonomy. And I'll be glad to talk with you one-on-one afterwards, but we'll take other questions here or we'll be hung up on this. There's one on the left here, right to you, by your side.
Do you think a person can wonder and find meaning in life without believing in the Christian God?
Yeah, you can find wonder and meaning apart from the Christian God. Yes, you can, but that does not mean you found the truth. You can find aspects of truth. For example, you and I may agree that this auditorium has certain color on the walls and it has so many number of people here. That's a truth. We can find that. But the truth about essence, I don't believe is ultimately obtainable apart from a transcending point of reference, which is to God himself. Now, if God doesn't exist, and that statement happens to be true, and you believe that there is no such person as God, and that statement happens to be true, I would have to say to you there are tons of other questions that you will not be able to answer coherently. So let me give you a definition of truth, okay? Truth generally has two tests. It is called a correspondence test and a coherence test. In correspondence, you are looking for whether a statement made corresponds to reality. Okay? So in a court of law, you may say, for example, I did not kill this person, and you may be telling the truth. But that does not mean you did not have a hand in the killing. You may say, I just didn't hold the gun, I didn't pull the trigger. Now, the prosecution might try to say, we're not accusing you of pulling the trigger. We're accusing you of conspiring with other people for somebody to pull the trigger. Now, what will the prosecution do? They will examine you from every aspect of evidence they have to bring a coherence to their prosecutorial endeavors. So it is not just a statement corresponding to reality. It is a series of statements that have to cohere together to make the story complete. So every statement about God or anti-God has to be both correspondence and coherence. How do they test coherence? They generally do it with three tests: logical consistency, empirical adequacy, and experiential relevance. Logical consistency, empirical adequacy, and experiential relevance. Those are considered the three tests for truth in coherence. So I've told you 2-point, 3-point. Coherence and correspondence. 3 tests in coherence. Coherence, correspondence, logical consistency, empirical adequacy, experiential relevance. This 2-3 test has to be put to 4 questions: origin, meaning, morality, and destiny. Origin, meaning, morality, and destiny. Correspondence, coherence, logical consistency, empirical adequacy, experiential relevance, origin, meaning, morality, and destiny. I call that my 2-3-4 test. And I can say this to you: if a person says there is no God, the coherence will fall flat in trying to ultimately give essential worth to human beings who are the total product then of time plus matter plus chance. And so I say to you, it is possible existentially to find some wonder and meaning for oneself, but it is very difficult to live consistently while giving everybody else the same prerogative and defining origin, meaning, morality, and destiny. Moral reasoning is the hatpin to the heart of naturalism. Hitler or Mother Teresa, no difference in moral reasoning. None in a naturalistic framework. None in a naturalistic framework. But if there's a transcendent basis for moral reasoning, for example, let me give this to you. Hinduism believes in reincarnation and karma. Okay? Every birth is a rebirth, and every birth is a product of your previous birth. So if you are born in a low caste, it is because of some previous thing you did in your previous life. So Hinduism has systemically given to itself the right to tell some people you're actually born low. You're actually born low. You are not born at the same level that the Brahman is. You are an achut, an untouchable, or you're born at Barakas. Now, what do you say to that person? Do you say, I agree with you? Or do you say, no, that's what Mahatma Gandhi tried, by the way. Mahatma Gandhi took the achuts, the untouchable, and called them Harijan, the people of God. On what basis? Not on the basis of Hinduism. On the basis of his own belief that human beings had essential worth, not on the basis of the caste system assigned by Hinduism. I'll give you a very moving illustration here because I'm really a professor of world religions. That's my life, okay? That's what I do. I was in Jerusalem recently, and I was with 4 young Palestinian boys having lunch. They're good friends. And one of them leaned over to me and said, I heard a conversation a few weeks ago that I want to report to you and get your feedback on. He said there was a minister here, a clergyman, talking to one of our sheikhs. The Israelis had killed 4 Palestinians, and the sheikh had ordered the killing of 8 Israelis, and they carried it out. So this minister looked at the sheikh. He said, I'm sitting at the table listening to this conversation, and I said to the sheikh, who gave you the right to be the executioner of the world? And the sheikh said to him, I'm not the executioner of the world, I'm only an instrument of God's justice. So the minister looked at him and said, where then does forgiveness fit in your philosophy? He said, it is only for those who deserve it. He said, Mr. Zacharias, in that 2 minutes I realized how different our worldviews are. I'm not an executioner, I'm an instrument of God's justice to order the killing of 8. Where is forgiveness? To the one who deserves it. I said, did anybody ask him, if you deserve it, then it's not forgiveness? But you see, this is the real world. So the executioner found happiness in what he did, fulfillment in what he did. As wonderful as it may sound that we can find an objective point of reference and meaning, it's nothing but an imaginary pipe dream. There is no point of reference for an absolute in a relativistic world. Let me end with this statement. To say all truth is relative is a self-defeating statement. I'll tell you why. If I say all truth is relative, that means it includes that statement. If it includes that statement, that means that statement is also not always true. But if it excludes that statement, that means it's positing an absolute while denying that absolutes actually exist. So one way or the other, it's a self-defeating statement. You cannot say all truth is relative without either absolutizing it or relativizing it. One more, yes, right at the back there.
I have a question about God himself. If he is the one who is the most trustworthy and loves me the most and is wonderful, why does he ask me to live in a society where I am surrounded by people who are not? And why can't I be with him like before my birth or after I die?
So let me repeat that. If God is trustworthy and honorable type thing, why does he ask me to live in a society that is not like him? You know, people often say, when you get to God, what question are you going to ask him first? That has never crossed my mind. What I'm afraid of is what question he's going to ask me first. It's a very fair question you're asking. What do we know about the world in which we live? The world in which we live, we understand, at least this much for most of us, that love is the supreme ethic. Love is the supreme ethic. I don't know too many philosophers who deny that. Anybody who denies that is just looking for an argument. Love is the supreme ethic. If love is the supreme ethic, the freedom of the will is indispensable for love. You cannot have a machine that loves you. You can have a machine that will comply with what you want, but you will never, when Garry Kasparov, the chess master, played IBM's Deep Blue computer, and he was afraid of losing the chess match because he said, otherwise, if I lose to a computer, he said, as human beings, we will lose our dignity. I wanted to write to him and tell him I lost my dignity after the calculators came out, leave alone the computers came out. And after it was over and Deep Blue beat Garry Kasparov, or at least they thought Deep Blue would beat Garry Kasparov, they asked the question, what is Deep Blue going to do to celebrate? Take Deep Pink out for dinner? Now we have Watson, the IBM computer designed to beat the champions of Jeopardy and beat the two of them. Do you know how many pages of information Watson had poured into it? 200 million pages of information of human books, with an algorithm capacity of processing the teraflop at a galloping speed of pursuing those 200 million pages and finding an answer in 3 seconds. What would have happened if Watson had spit out a statement that human beings don't exist after borrowing 200 million pages of information from human beings? You see, in this world, God has given us His information and His blueprint, and He's told us that the supreme ethic is love. Where love is possible, the free will is necessary. And so in a world where the free will is necessary, you will have good and evil. And it is the task of the salt and the light to bring savor to this world and light into the darkness. And so I say to you, as I travel around the world, whenever, I stand up and speak, but my wife will tell you this, my colleagues will tell you this, I'd really rather not do this. I'd rather take a briefcase with bandages and help people and the broken and the bruised of this world. That's what actually in our organization we do that. We call it Wellspring, to minister to the hurting, to bind up the wounds, and many of them, some of the poorest in India, whom I've gone to in other parts of the world, will look me in the eye afterwards and say to me, Khuda aapko bhala kare, may God richly bless you. These simple-minded people who receive just a little gift will turn to you and offer the name of God and ask His blessing upon you. It's only more among the well-to-do and the ranks of the educated and the successful that we like to debunk God. The simplest people in the world begin and end their day crying out to God and cry out to Him for help and needy, and no amount of deprivation takes away that faith. I say to you, love is the supreme ethic, free will is indispensable. Where there is free will, evil is possible. Where you see evil, shine the light of goodness, and that's the best way I know to dispel the darkness. King George VI in 1939 spoke to the world, and he said, I said to the man at the gate of the year, give me a light that I may walk safely into the unknown. And he said to me, go out into the darkness and put your hand into the hand of God, and it shall be to you better than the light and safer than the known. Go out into the darkness and put your hand into the hand of God. It shall be to you better than the light and safer than the known. When I was 17 in India, my life had fallen apart completely. I've told my story in the book, Walking from East to West. My father was a highly powerful person in India. Through a process I won't go into, I tried to take my life. I lay on a hospital bed in Delhi with the doctor giving me no more than 5 days to live. I had never opened a Bible in my life on my own, never. And when I went into that hospital, a man walked into my hospital room and left a little red New Testament. I couldn't open it, my body was dehydrated. My mother opened it, my mother's English was not that fluent, and this was a King James version of the English Bible. She started to read to me from the Gospel of John, chapter 14, and Jesus said, speaking to Thomas, "Because I live, you also shall live. I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No man shall come to the Father except through me." Ironically, Thomas went to India, to the state of Kerala, and spoke to the Nambudhiris. My ancestry is Nambudhiri, the highest caste of the Hindu priesthood. 2,000 years later, I'm lying on a hospital bed reading what God said, what Jesus said to Thomas. I said, "Jesus, if you're real and you are who you claim to be, listen to the cry of this person and change my heart. Change who I am." I walked to that hospital 5 days later. That's why after I went to Canada to study business, I abandoned that business world, went in the world of philosophy and theology, and today it's my privilege to see thousands coming to Christ all over the world. It's a dark world. It's a dangerous world, but the love of God shows you in the midst of that to shine a light with His word of truth and see lives miraculously transformed. The more the darkness, the greater the need of the light, and God will have you as an ambassador for Him. So take that courage and walk.
You said earlier that God is the truth, that this is the point of reference, but I wonder how you can know what the point of reference is, because everything we know about God is told or written by people, and a lot of people are talking about God and saying that they do right because of God. But like you said earlier, some people, you say it's not really God like the caste system. So a lot of people say, I take this point of reference, but everybody has another reference point, and it's all set by people because of God. Or
if I understand you correctly, when I talk about God and finding a point of reference for Him, there are many other people who also talk about God, but who have different points of reference and come out to different kinds of conclusions. How do we know here what really is the true belief here and what is false, and how do we wade through all of this? Is that the gist of your question?
Also, I wonder, there is a true belief, because everybody has his belief, but who is going to say which one is true, and isn't that a lot of power for someone?
Okay, very good, very fair question. One of Winston Churchill's opponents one day got up and roundly gave him a tongue lashing, the worst kind Churchill ever had, and he leaned over to a friend of his there and he said, "There, but for the grace of God, goes God." A lot of people who want to be God, a lot of people who try to play God. There are other people who act as God, and they prove very quickly that they really are not God. They may act as God. Your question is a very critical question, and I'll tell you why. For the person who says there is no God, the philosophical worldview is so contradictory that it's almost bizarre. Okay? Almost bizarre. I studied at Cambridge under the leading atheist at Cambridge University. His name was Don Cupid. And I purposely studied under him because I wanted to get the best possible arguments for atheism over the time that I was there. Most of them are totally hollow, and the most fundamental questions of life remain unanswered in atheism. I've written a book called Can Man Live Without God? It was 3 lectures delivered at Harvard University at the law school. I urge you, if you can try and get a hold of it, it'll give you the full range of argument critiquing atheism and naturalism and the defense of Christianity, called Can Man Live Without God? But now you come to the world of belief in God with various beliefs, many, many religions. People may think there are that many, but when it really boils down to the basic beliefs reduced to about 4 or 5, there are the monotheistic religions, principally of Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. They're the 3 leading monotheistic religions in the world. Others may be subsets, but the ideas are either crossovers or similar. Then you've got what you call the pantheistic religions, where man is equated with being the divine. That you have Hinduism and Buddhism. Gautama Buddha was actually born a Hindu and renounced 2 of its fundamental doctrines, belief in the Vedas and in the caste system. So Gautama Buddha renounced Hinduism, and his teachings became the doctrines of Buddhism. Buddhism is actually an atheistic religion. There is no mention of God in Buddhism, either Hinayana or Mahayana. There's no belief. The differences in how you attain nirvana, how you ultimately attain enlightenment. In Hinduism, there are several strands, but there are 2 basic strands of it. One does have a theistic framework to it, and the other has a monistic framework which says God is not personal. The goal in life is to come into alignment with the ultimate impersonal absolute. Shankaracharya was the leading exponent of this monistic system, no personal God. Shankara's mother was a bhakti devotee. She believed in a personal God. In fact, in Hinduism, they have numbered 330 million deities in the pantheon of Hinduism. 330 million, and they're still counting. Good, goes on and on. Now, when somebody looked at Shankara and said to him, your mother is a believer in a personal God, and you do not believe God personally exists, how do you explain this? He said, what is good for her now is what she will believe. She will one day arrive at my belief that God is not personal and that we ultimately get aligned with the impersonal absolute. The doctrine of Maya was invoked, illusion. You think something is right, you take it to be right at a certain stage in life till you graduate and find out there is no ultimate God and we are all one with the divine. I have just released my latest book. It is called Why Jesus? And the subtitle is Rediscovering His Truth in an Age of Mass-Marketed Spirituality. You take the questions of correspondence and coherence and apply them to these worldviews. And I will tell you the shortest cut to find out truth from falsehood. Find out if there are systemic, deep-seated, fundamental assertions in that worldview that are clearly wrong. That are clearly wrong. And once you can see those flaws and where these extensions will lead to others, then you at least have the right to say, there are many clear falsehoods in this belief. Now, there may be some aspects of truth in them, but as systems, they collapse when there is a systemic flaw. When I look at the person of Jesus Christ, and that's my talk on my last night, by the way, why I believe the Christian answer is the right answer. It will hopefully answer the question in detail. Don't get dismayed by a fact that there are many beliefs. There are many counterfeits, currencies in this world. That does not mean there is no such thing as a genuine currency. There are many false judgments made on this world, in the courts of law. That does not mean there is no such thing as a right judgment. So when you take the test of truth and apply it to the 4 questions of life, to the Judeo-Christian worldview, you will find his answers to correspond to reality and cohere. Now, I want to make a very important statement here because you raised a very critical subpoint. That does not make me God or anyone else who lays truth to the claim to this pattern as God. We may flounder, we may make some mistakes, we may falter. That's why I say to people, Don't listen to us. Take the New Testament, study it, ask Jesus if he is who he claims to be, to reveal himself to you, and you will find he will do that for you, and in him there is no error. He is the only perfect one. We may have certain beliefs that are true and some that are false, but as systems of belief, I believe the Christian faith has the only answers that correspond and cohere. That does not give me the right to deny anybody else the privilege to disagree or believe something else. The fact of the matter is, I have a right to my belief. Everyone has a right to their belief. That does not mean everything they believe is right. I will tell you this, outside of Christ, you will have a very hard time giving me a definition of essential human dignity. Let me repeat that. Outside of Christ, you'll have a very hard time giving me a definition of essential human dignity. Let me give you this statement and then an illustration and we'll close. When I was studying in the United States, and this is a Chinese PhD, who now teaches at the university in Singapore, pointed this out and she was spot on. You take this statement that we are all, in the Declaration of Independence, that we are all created equal, endowed by our Creator with inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We're all created equal, endowed by our Creator with inalienable rights for the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. Here's the point I want to make to you. I believe in that statement, and I think most people do. No other religion would have given that statement. No atheist would have given that statement, that I have some inalienable rights for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I am willing to live with the entailments of that statement, not because it's American or Indian or anything else, but that's what I believe in my heart. And only the Judeo-Christian worldview will give you the legitimacy of the same. Now, America today tries to think, for the most people, that it's not a Christian nation, and they're right. But I am saying this, that the ideas that shaped them were born out of the Judeo-Christian worldview, and they're not living with those ideas today, and that's the reason for the problem that the country is really falling apart. I'm endowed by my Creator with inalienable rights for the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. That, to me, is the bequest of the Judeo-Christian worldview. Hinduism wouldn't make that statement. Islam would not make that statement. Naturalism wouldn't make the statement. So the entailments by which I live only is in keeping with, in my way of thinking, the Judeo-Christian worldview. I close with this story. Many years ago, there was a group called the Kingston Trio. They sang a song called Desert Pete, and it told the story of a traveler going through a desert with bottles of water slung on his shoulder. He kept drinking it, consuming it till all the water was gone. And he didn't know what he was going to do, till he saw a pump in the middle of the road. He went over to the pump and lifted the handle of the pump, brought the handle down on the metal to hear metal upon metal, completely dry. He despaired. But then he noticed a can around the nozzle, and in the can was a note. He opened the note and it said, "Dear traveler, don't despair. There's plenty of water here. Just follow the instructions." Under the sand below the nozzle, if you dig out the sand a few inches, you'll find a bottle of water, and it should be full. Don't drink it. Gradually empty it out in the cylinder of the pump and prime it with the other hand. While you're priming it, as you gradually pour the water in, the suction system will begin to work. Drink all the water you want. Refill all the bottles you've got. Don't forget to fill up that one bottle you took and put it back here for the next person to pass by. Warning, you're going to be tempted to disbelieve this note and consume the one bottle because you can see it. If you do that, you will soon be thirsty, and so will everyone else who follows you. Abide by what is said, fill it, put it back, and have all the water you want, and also for the ones to follow. Signed, Desert Pete. A secular music group sings that. That's what the gospel is about. You're tempted to consume life upon yourself, and you soon get thirsty again. But you empty it out into the hands of God as He has made you, and you will find the fulfillment not only for yourself, but the privilege for everyone else who follows. It's not signed by Desert Pete, but it's signed by one who lived in the desert and gave living water to those who came and thirsted for eternal life. That's Jesus Christ, who gives you wonder, truth, love, and security by offering Himself on the cross, having lived that perfect life, and rising again from the dead. That is the beauty of the gospel, and any one of us may hearken to it. Don't listen to me. Ask Him to reveal Himself to you, and you'll find Him to be the way, the truth, and the life. Take care. Blessings.